सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहा त्रिनयना माणिक्यमौली स्फुरत् तारानायकशेखरा स्मितमुखी मापीनवक्षोरुहा पाणिभ्यामलिपूर्णरत्नचषकम् रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम् सततज्वर विषमज्वर ग्रह नक्षत्र दोषाञ्चान्या हर हर काली सर सर गौरी धम धम विद्ये आले माले काले बन्धे भज भज विद्ये मख मख विद्ये नाशय नाशय पापम् हर हर दुःस्वप्नम् विध्वंसय विध्वंसय विनाशिनि रजनी सन्ध्ये बन्धुभिनादे मानस्तोषे मानसवेगे शङ्खिनी चक्रिणी वज्रिणी गदिनी शूलिनी अपमृत्युविनाशिनी विश्वेश्वरी द्राविडी केशवदैते पशुपति सहिते धीममर्दिनि गमनी कामिनी शबरी विराटी वाजक्ती
Namaste and a warm greetings and welcome to all of you who have joined us for this session on the 16th day of the Global Festival of Yoga. Today, it's the third session that we are in with none other than Dr. Naveen K. Vishweshwaraya. I would like to invite him to join us for this session. Naveen ji, request you to kindly come in, please.
Namaste, Vinay.
Namaste. As most of you know, Indica Yoga is a platform which looks at diverse and inclusive forms of yoga, which focuses on authenticity, immersion, and transformation. Seeking in authenticity is one of the main quests that we have taken upon ourselves, and we would want to explore various dimensions in reaching out to what exactly forms authenticity in yoga teaching, yoga practice, and yoga therapy. And in order to address one such pertinent question, we have with us Dr. Naveen K. Vishweshwaraya. Dr. Naveen K. Vishweshwaraya is a well-known name in the field of yoga, especially yoga research. He is a Fulbright fellow, and I should say he's one of the smartest minds and the brightest names in the field of yoga research. Dr. Naveen Vishweshwaraya, a Fulbright fellow, is a consulting integrative medicine physician and a yoga researcher. He is India's first qualified yoga and naturopathy physician and leads the field with more than 20 years of research, academic and clinic experience. Dr. Vishweshwaraya has authored and co-authored more than 50 research publications in indexed peer-reviewed journals. He has lectured at institutes of repute, which include Harvard Medical School, Mayo Clinic, Center for Brain and Mind in University of California, MD Anderson Cancer Research Center in University of Texas, Center for Brain Research in University of Florida, and Center for Mental Health, University of Melbourne, and National University of Singapore. Dr. Vishweshwaraya has served S. Vyasa, one of the premier institutes for yoga studies and yoga research in Bangalore from 1994 till 2015 in various research capacities, and has even received DSc, Doctor of Science, one of the highest degrees in the field of science for yoga research in the year 2016. Currently, he is the International Research Leadership Fellow at the Australian Research Council for Complementary and Integrative Medicine and a visiting professor at the Faculty of Health, University of Technology in Sydney. Dr. Vishweshwaraya is the founder and the national president of INIGMA, that is Indian Naturopathy and Yoga Graduates Medical Association in India. Considering the fact that the integrative medicine is emerging as future medicine, Dr. Vishweshwaraya has founded a research NGO called Foundation for Assessment and Integration of Traditional Health Systems, FAIDS. FAIDS, as a part of its clinical initiative, has established India's medical clinic for integrative medicine called Yoga Kshema Stress and Lifestyle Clinic in Bangalore, where the best of the evidence-based conventional and Indian medicine is offered. This has been his personal quest to bring about the integrative approach to medicine. What would be the best better? How can evidence-based approach be connected and made synchronous with the traditional approaches? What are the challenges that come in front of us? In fact, today we'll be speaking on this particular question, generic therapy, yoga therapy beyond gurus and styles. On one side, you have a traditional approach and various styles that have come up within the tradition. And on the other side, the scientific approach demands a certain standard and uniformization. So how do we deal with these questions? How do we reconcile? How best can we solve these approaches? Bring together these approaches is a question, and none other than Dr. Vishweshwaraya can deal with this question with a great sense of clarity, without any detachment or aversion. So with this brief background, I request Dr. Naveen ji to take over from this point and lead us. Over to you, Naveen ji.
Thank you, Vinay. As usual, a very kind introduction, and then couldn't have been a better preamble for the question that we all together want to answer today. So in the next 30 to 35 minutes, I would like to break the session into three major parts. One, define the problem. Why are we looking at something beyond gurus and styles? Now, what do we mean by that? Do we have inherently any problem there? Or are we looking at more evolution of what it is there already from the perspective of the styles that are methods available from gurus and institutions? The second part would be in its evolution in the last 30-40 years, how yoga has evolved, and has there been any concerns and hurdles almost in making this classical traditional wisdom amenable, compatible for both academic and medical purposes. So what are the concerns there? What have we achieved and what we have not been able to achieve? Finally, if if there are some concerns which is holding us back in effectively integrating classical yoga into academic mainstream studies and mainstream medical as a mainstream medical intervention, what is that we should be doing, and what could be the possible immediate, short-term and long-term initiatives that we as practitioners, teachers, faculty and institutions should be thinking and doing, would be the third part. So, and then I would very much like spend rather more than what is typically allotted for question and answer, because we want to get more and more comments, because this is something that is seen as an evolutionary question for yoga therapy. And as I know, the audience for this yoga festival is more and more people who are already in the field of yoga in some capacity, and hence the comments, questions would be actually help this evolution. So with this, let's go to the first part, where let's look at classical yoga in itself, and then look at what has happened in its expansion, in its propagation, in its practice across the world. Now, we have classical yoga texts given by different rishis and acharyas, and some of them give you conceptual framework, and some of them will give you actual technical description, and some of them very rarely dwell on application and health benefits. They're most guiding in nature rather than prescription in nature. So whatever that is, the conceptual framework being Yoga Vasishtha, Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and then the description of techniques more from Hatha Yoga, Swara Yoga, Natha Sampradaya, Geranda Samhita, Shiva Samhita, and so on and so forth, and more commentaries on all of this. So gives us a conceptual framework and a traditional description of how these techniques, what are these techniques and how these are practiced, and what could be the possible benefits. While none of these descriptions are prescription in nature, but they are more tutorial, training, manual for a seeker or a sadhaka. Now, while there are different approaches and emphasis in different texts, all of them added to this one central theme and practice and conceptual framework called yoga. So it was never a deviation, or none of them created a sense of difference or wanting to be unique, possible conflict between styles and techniques or descriptions. So there was no intellectual conflict nor practice conflict. So it was all a continuum, and people could either, based on the stage of their practice, get exposed in a cascadic manner from fundamentals to the advanced wisdom, or be comfortable in whatever level, stage, style they are. But if one wants to evolve, it was all adding up to one single larger path, which is how we all inherited yoga in a one unified manner, whenever it was explored. So this is where it was and how it was presented to us. But then when yoga was more institutionalized, or a step before that, more an activity in an ashram setting, where this was practiced in a structured manner, and then became teaching, a formal teaching, to prepare somebody as an instructor, or to help somebody evolve from level 1 to as many levels in some of these styles are, or in its evolutionary mature levels, in whatever way each of the gurus and institutions coined it. Now, which is also okay, and if you really take a close look, academically, you can classify all of these exploration, institutional structured teaching and presenting of yoga as three main baskets. So one which emphasized body work, the other which emphasized breath work, and then finally the ones which focused on mind work. So you have styles and practices and gurus emphasizing body work. Doesn't mean they don't have breath work and mind work, but the emphasis on body work. Similarly, some of them have emphasized breath and others mind work. Let's look at the examples. The three pillars of modern yoga, that is B.K. Iyengar-ji, Krishnamacharya style, Deshikacharya-ji, and then the Pattabhi Jois-ji. Ashtanga Vinyasa style that we are all familiar, and Iyengar is known as Iyengar style. Now, all of them have really taken the exploration of body work to really a very comprehensive, heightened level. Now, the number of asanas that are practiced and taught, the way they are taught, go beyond the classical text. Now, while this evolution was very, very constructive and helped the world embrace yoga in a very, very interesting manner, it presented also distinct styles. Now look, and then there are a lot of other styles came, Hatha Yoga, Bikram Yoga, Hot Yoga, and so on and so forth. So there's as many that you can think of. Then breath work emphasized yoga. So there was breath work inherently, so there are a group in the world which is called breathwork group, and then the Sri Ravi Shankarji's Sudarshana Kriya Yoga, and then Swami Ramdev came and talked largely about pranayama and embraced Kapalbhati, a kriya, into pranayama and presented as a pranayama, as a preamble to pranayama, and then popularized it across the country and the world. And then from both Indian and Buddhist traditions, we have mindfulness, which is largely focusing on mind work. It could be Kundalini, it could be Vipassana, it could be Brahma Kumari's Raja Yoga, or it could be Vedanta based home meditation, and so on and so forth. So basically, we have focusing on three cardinal aspects, which in a way helped people, one, embrace and evolve. So that is how I look at the chronology, how this evolved, and the testimony of that is how B.K. Iyengar-ji wrote a light on yoga, and then light on pranayama, and light on Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Each was spaced close to 10 years apart. So this actually reflects how the world embraced yoga and matured itself from body work to breath work to mind work. Now, while all of this is very constructive, very useful, and set the whole tone for yoga to be a global phenomena, it also presented concern, a problem to solve, where a wholesome yoga was needed to be presented. So for example, now Ashtanga yoga and Ashtanga of Patanjali may not match all the time. And if it passes many hands in the guru lineage, and I've seen a flyer in US where Ashtanga is like strength, power, endurance, and so on and so forth. So there is no boundary to this exploration, and that is a problem. If somebody wants to look at its academic adaptation, then we have a problem. It has also posed a problem for research. So for example, if there is a body work, so you have to synchronize the inherent characteristic of yoga style and what it can help. So if the body work based yoga is there, it's best suited for musculoskeletal degenerative conditions. Or if there is a breath emphasized yoga, then it's very good for metabolic disorders. And if there is mind work based yoga, then it's very good for mental health. So there is a psychophysiological inclination to these styles or to this emphasis. But unless it is presented and constructed that way, it will not be used that way in academic and medical parlance. For example, there are papers which has explored Iyengar Yoga for hypertension. There are papers which has explored Sudarshana Kriya Yoga for more metabolic and other conditions. There are explorations. So there is nothing wrong in it. As people get in touch with any style of guru or a teacher in their academic vicinity, they embrace that style and start to explore medical benefits or health benefits. So as we know, in fact, if you ask me personally, in 25 years of my yoga research experience and 30 years of my yoga studies experience, any yoga in any form, taught by anybody, practiced by anybody at any level, can produce and do produce some measurable benefits. So we all have this advantage, and therefore there are more than 5,000 papers on yoga which do present positive outcomes. But then they do not add up because of these inherent differences that we have. Now, similar conflict is there in a bigger way in mind work or meditation. For example, when you look at meditation research, there are more scientific evidence on meditation than yoga per se. So now the problem there is anything from lying down or shavasana or guided relaxation to classical meditation is meditation. So everything is referred to as meditation, and every form, every type is researched as meditation. Now, by it being a very different in its construct, in its content, in its method, in its practice, it is all pooled as meditation research, and we have a problem. In fact, that is where while I was at Visvyasa as my doctoral work, and then as part of ICMR Center for Advanced Studies in Yoga and Neuroscience, and then Department of Science and Technology's unique initiative of cognitive neuroscience, we addressed this work, this problem in meditation, and classified all forms of meditation and its available research into the wakeful consciousness that is prescribed in Upanishad. That is Chanchalata, Ekagrata, Dharana, Dhyana. And then suddenly different forms and types of meditation fell into different phases of this wakeful consciousness. And then if you look at their scientific benefits or reports, it kind of fell in place in conjunction, in synchrony with the traditional description. Until then it was chaos. So this kind of order to inherent technique, method, and description is needed. Now let's look at the next level. So there is derived yoga. So now the derived yoga is, for example, Sudarshana Kriya Yoga, which has Bhastrika and other pranayama techniques. So you look at inner engineering, it has Shambhavi Mudra and other allied techniques. So there are essentially a core classical technique, and then there are other allied techniques put together and forms a new style. Similarly, Bikram Yoga was a set of asanas practiced in a sequence. Now again, it was more referred to as Bikram Yoga, and then what it went into it, inherently the ingredients were least presented or considered while it was either practiced or studied wherever for health benefits or research purposes. So the ingredient analysis in any healthcare intervention is very, very important. So whether it is a herb or a synthetic chemical or a practice, be it physiotherapy or acupuncture or Tai Chi or meditation, the Vipassana or mindfulness, any technique that we talk about, any intervention we talk about, the ingredient analysis is the very first step. So we need to know what is in it, and then what is the method, and then what is the described effect, and then what is the extrapolated health benefit or outcome, performance outcome that we are looking at. So there has to be a uniformity, a standard approach to it, which subscribes only to classical yoga, nothing else. So because we do not have this largely, now look at last 40, 50 years, the way yoga has really climbed, and then with the boost of Yoga Day from 2015, the way it has become a global phenomena, it is a profession, it is a career, it is formally offered as an education. There are more than 70 universities in India offer MSc Yoga. There are more than 50 colleges which gives yoga and naturopathy as one single system of medicine. And there are large number of classical institutions which give postgraduate diploma in yoga therapy and yoga. And now there are yoga universities like Safiya Vyasa University of Patanjali, Deva Samskriti Vishwavidyalaya, and so on and so forth, which gives a variety, bouquet of yoga programs. Now, all of this is so structured. Now, as we just heard recently, there's Vivekananda Yoga University started in US, which is now going to give masters in yoga. And there's one university in Washington that's already giving masters in yoga. There's one in California giving masters in yoga studies. So this is now becoming a full-fledged profession and career. And if you look at research, it's there. More than 70 medical institutions in US and North America alone have yoga research activities, very, very active. In fact, US leads the world in quantum of yoga research that it is engaged compared to even in India. Now it is us, the onus is on us to look at this problem critically and then understand the nuances and the complications that it presents. So now let's look at what are the concerns from academic point of view and the medical compatibility point of view. So what if this is so evolved and if this is how the world is embraced? So what could be the concern? I will like to present an incident in this direction, that where one of the research publication was proposal was submitted to National Institute of Health, the funding agency in United States of America. We got a question. Now this is an old question, about 10, 12 years ago, where the question was, which style of yoga are you researching or are you proposing to research? And then we said it's generic yoga, it is integrated yoga, it's called Ashtanga yoga in classical texts, and this is what we want to research. So then the reviewers write to us, is this a form of yoga that is popularly practiced and taught in United States? And we said no. So then what's the purpose of researching such a style? Look at that. So even when you want to take a critical review and an attempt to evaluate a yoga for healthcare benefit, the styles dictated the terms as opposed to the evaluation, the query, the assessment methodology to drive what we want to look for as a possible intervention. So that's when we woke up to this idea that, like we have in any intervention, in any discipline of study, we need to have standardization and subscribe to classical texts and classical wisdom and the direction of evolution that classical texts prescribe. Now, there are a whole lot of other domains that are not adequately explored as much as it is explored for healthcare benefits. For example, yoga is primarily a darshana, a philosophy. So have we looked at yoga as a philosophy in philosophy departments of universities across the world? Optimally, answer is no. Have we explored yoga in education in a very structured manner? Answer is no. And this can be from primary education to the university education. While university education has fructified in India, where there are yoga departments and there are post-graduation available in close to 70 universities. But then have we put that across the education spectrum in a structured mainstream educational modality? Answer is no. And then the third is psychology. Now, much of the wisdom, authentic classical traditional information that is available in Vedanta, Upanishad and yoga texts and from Sankhya philosophy and yoga philosophy enriches the idea of human mind and behavior of psychology. So Western psychology can gain a lot from Indian psychology, if we can call that. And in fact, the there is a movement in this direction led by Professor Girishwar Mishra and Professor Anand Parajpe and Professor Matthias Cornelissen from Auroville and many others, where the idea of Indian psychology is already born more than 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. But then have we optimally positioned it as a psychological method, modality, and study? No. Now, behavioral sciences or cognitive neuroscience, have we positioned mind work, meditation, yoga as a whole in a way that it can reach out to the neurology and other academic behavioral questions that is still unanswered? No. And then look at humanities, physical sciences or sports, management studies, and many other applications, that occupational health, many other applied areas that we can think of. So there are a whole lot of areas, the domains where yoga can actually be pursued and considered for academic study and used as an intervention or a tool for human performance. But we haven't been able to do it optimally. In the contrast, look at the prevalence of yoga. If you look at each of these styles, each of the gurus, the spread penetration is huge. More or less every country has all of these yoga schools, branches of all these institutions and ashrams, and followers of all of these gurus all over. But still we have not been able to take this into mainstream education. Because if I embrace one style, then I am guided by that style. So it's like a funnel. It's like a window. So see the world of yoga through my style, my window. So even followers and practitioners have this problem. So if I am a follower of one style, one guru, I am very apprehensive of taking a critical view of the other style and other gurus' methods. Now, in contrast, in yoga, it has to be very, very open-minded, all-embracing, considering, wanting to look at critical aspects of different styles and wanting to explore based on those unique critical differences that we can find, adopt them in a very academic way to different domains of application. We haven't been able to do that very effectively because we have not created or initiated a platform and a dialogue to answer this. So which is why a lot of doctors, where they know that there are health benefits. In fact, I want to share one more very startling information. There are close to more than 300,000 yoga teachers across the world, registered, unregistered, certified, not certified, and so on and so forth. Self-practitioners practicing for their family and small groups to a very institutional studio practitioners. Now, these people do not know and don't constantly interact with these researchers who have published more than 5,000 papers. So there is a clear division between practitioners and gurus and styles to the academic group who are researching yoga and meditation. So now they need to communicate and meet. So thankfully, International Association of Yoga Therapists, SVSA University from 1991, in fact, led the movement, and then Patanjali Yogapith, and then now Asian Association of Yoga Therapists are bringing academicians and yoga instructors, yoga teachers, and yoga therapists together. So this is the first step, so communication. The second, we need to find a way out of coding has happened in calling it styles and based on gurus and institutions. Now we need to decode it. What do I mean by decoding? For example, Bhastrika is coded into Sudarshana Kriya Yoga, and we need to decode Bhastrika from Sudarshana Kriya Yoga and look at its open-ended benefits and applications. This I call generic yoga or generic yoga therapy. So if we can bring this genericity into yoga styles and practices and methods available, then that solves this idea of differences in its construct, framework, methodology, and practice. We need to bring uniformity in all of these levels. Now, which is why, going back to problems with their doctors and medical institutions. They say, I like Sudarshana Kriya Yoga, but that doesn't mean I can have a Shri Shri Yoga, Sudarshana Kriya Yoga class, then I have Vinyasa class. So I can't be running a yoga studio kind of setting in a clinical setting, in a medical setting. I need a form of yoga which looks at critical view of pathophysiological requirement and treatment objective, and then set of practices which is good for musculoskeletal, degenerative, metabolic, mental health, and cancer and other serious disorders. So we want to look at yoga in that direction. So that's precisely what they're saying is, give me generic yoga, classical yoga, construct, put the techniques based on the purpose for which we are constructing a protocol or a method. Now, we have this in drugs. So you have a paracetamol drug, but it's sold as Crocin, it's sold as Combiflam, it's sold as many other things. So it's up to us to buy which company's paracetamol, but we're basically buying paracetamol. So this is what doctors are trying to tell us in the yoga community and the yoga research community. Present me a generic yoga that suits, that serves the treatment objective of a given disease. And then construct a protocol in a scientific manner where we have done it for over 25 years, where 3 things go into it. Traditional description, the physiological data when these techniques are practiced by healthy people, and then the clinical observation when these are tried in a small group of patients in a clinical setting. Put the 3 information together, you get evidence-based protocol. Then research it in a clinical trial, and then refine that protocol through the clinical trial and present it as a disease-specific evidence-based yoga therapy. So which is free from all of these shades that gets into yoga. Now, similarly, we need, if we have to take yoga into schools, we need generic yoga. We can't take one style in one state, in one district and one school. So every school, every district can't have different styles, you know. So we have to have a generic yoga for education, generic yoga framework for psychology, Indian psychology, for humanities, for management studies, for occupational health, for every domain, we need generic yoga. Now, for simplicity, generic yoga is nothing but classical yoga, the way Yoga Shastra, yoga texts prescribe it to be practiced and followed and taught. So we have to go back to the classical, traditional description, learn the method to do any given technique of body, breath, mind work, then look at its inherent construct and possible effect, match it with either educational goals, philosophical goals, humanities goals, management goals, or healthcare goals, and then construct string of practices, combination of body, breath, mind, in a way that it serves the objective, and put that protocol into a systematic scientific evaluation and make it available either to educationists or to psychologists or to philosophers or to healthcare professionals. So that is what the scientific community is asking us to do. And we've taken some baby steps in this direction. And we have tried to evolve disease-based models. And we did this in an academic pursuit, but then people wanted a prototype to test it. Proof of concept needed to be done. And while Foundation for Assessment and Integration of Traditional Health Systems answered the same question for not just for yoga, but also for all other traditional systems. The same is true in Ayurveda, naturopathy, acupuncture, everywhere. In every traditional system, this is the problem, and we need to solve it. So there is a traditional Kerala Ayurveda, there is traditional Varanasi Ayurveda, Gujarat or North Indian, Central Indian Ayurveda. So there's a kind of, while there are different methods and ways of doing the same thing based on the evolution across the time and geography, we cannot afford to lose the central core. So that has happened in all traditional systems. And if you want to fit that into universities, academic studies, and to medically compatible healthcare intervention, we need to look at generic yoga. And this is something that we are not expected to do as a new effort. This is already done by our yogis and in our yoga shastra and in yoga texts. We simply have to imbibe it as it is. All that we did in the last 50 years to make yoga popular is okay in its place, in its wellness or pursuit of spirituality and its goals, but not for academic and medical purposes. So now finally, what should we do? What are the immediate, short, medium and long-term goals? Now let's look at what has happened from 1990s. So S. Vyasa, when we started yoga research in S. Vyasa from 1991, very actively, although the first landmark paper came there in 1985, and then Patanjali Yogapith came, and Deva Samskriti Vishwavidyalaya, and all the premier institutions like AIIMS, NIMHANS, all of them, and across the world from Harvard, largely Harvard Medical School led it in the early days, and then more and more American, North American, European, British, Australian universities started doing scientific evaluation of yoga. All of them have already taken baby steps in this direction. So in some studies, they've looked at the generic decoded yoga. But in most cases, they've embraced the style as it is. So now, when we want to present, so there are two categories of professionals now in yoga. Those of us who are in professional yoga need to look at decoded generic yoga, which is free from the shades, nuances, and methodological differences between each of the style given by the gurus, traditions, ashrams, and institutions. So we'll have to decode them, take away those differences, and embrace it in its true, traditional, authentic form. Whereas there are people who are followers of these styles, who have trained in these styles by these ashrams and gurus and institutions. Let them follow their style, because the more people in more serious manner practice it, the more genuine information can be extracted for us in academics to form generic yoga. So there's nothing wrong in what is happening. It's only the evolutionary step has to be taken. And if we can sensitize even ashrams and gurus and institutions in this direction, then self-alignment is the word I would like to call, happens. So every institution start to say, this is my inherent construct, style, and the application can be in this direction. So while I have a methodological presentation in any given name and form, but the core ingredient are as follows. So just the way each company is expected to make public the ingredient and its dose and its probable effect, every style can start doing that, which will help academicians in both non-medical and medical academic pursuits to put them together, create a protocol in a very effective manner. So now this has to happen as a research in the first place. In fact, we had to start talking about this whole idea of generic yoga and generic yoga therapy, and then bring in academicians who have already encountered these problems, and then bring clarity and declutter the research evidence already available and classify them the way we did it for meditation, and then give a roadmap to pursue only decoded generic yoga and generic yoga therapy to be researched in future attempts in institutions, ashrams, and academic institutions and medical institutions. And then also give a roadmap for ashrams, institutions, and gurus, how the generic part can be emphasized, highlighted, and presented. So 3 levels: decluttering, future roadmap for matching a style of yoga that is probably meet the requirement of academic goals or medical goals, and then go backwards to these origin of these styles and gurus and emphasize the delineation of core techniques. And if we can do all three simultaneously, I think in very short period of time, 3 to 5 years, we will have a very mature generic yoga and generic yoga therapy, which can be subjected for scientific and medical evaluation. And as that happens, it can be embraced as frozen protocols for various purposes. Now, this also serves very important purpose. For example, I have seen as an academician and professional, anybody with a few months diploma or a very traditional learning from under a guru to PhD in yoga is doing the same thing, either teach yoga or yoga therapy. They are not created professional hierarchy and maturity and the depth. So we haven't really, when we create more and more yoga instructors, certified therapists, doctors and specialists and the professionals in education, psychology and other domains, we need to give them a roadmap. Where do they belong? So if there are BSc, MSc, MA, BA, then they can largely be in yoga psychology, yoga education, yoga and humanities and other disciplines. And then those with yoga therapy training, and then yoga and naturopathy doctor training, and then MD in yoga therapy training and PhD in yoga and life sciences can serve the medical goals, and you present and work on presenting yoga as a medical intervention. So this clarity has to come. And I must thank Dr. Nagendra Guruji for this. He's created 5 disciplines or faculties in S. Vyasa University: Yoga for Humanities, Life Sciences, Physical Sciences, Management Studies, and Spirituality. Attempt has been made about 18 years ago, but it still needs to mature to a level that it becomes a global movement. I think we should all work together, all the institutions, all the gurus who are really mentoring all of us, and all the professional institutions, medical institutions, yoga and naturopathy colleges, all of these stakeholders should come together, global community from different organizations and Government of India, which is really spearheading and wanting to put the policies and its weight and economical support to make this happen. If we don't have the direction as a professional community, all of this support, all of this momentum that we have generated will not yield the desired results. So we would have lost a very good opportunity. So time to step back. We have enjoyed the campaigning of yoga all these years, and Yoga Day has really helped us celebrate yoga for 6 long years. Now time to look back and create position papers, roadmaps, and then start working on it for the next 5 years, where we have presented and positioned yoga as an academic and medical intervention. I think I should stop here and take questions. I think we have about 14 minutes to take questions, and I will leave Vinay to swift through the questions available and then select the most appropriate ones. And of course, we can always discuss at length with the interested people offline after this. After all, this is a trigger session, and let's continue the dialogue.
Thank you, Naveenji, for this highly thought-provoking presentation.
Thank you.
While it brought a lot of light into gray areas which we have not thought about in detail, it also has left with a lot of questions.
Yes.
In fact, as you rightly said at the end, it has really triggered
Yeah.
a series of questions.
Yes.
So please excuse me if I shoot many questions to you, and we
No
also,
problem.
we also have our participants already lining up with questions.
Okay.
So just to begin with you, I think this distinction between the classical yoga and derived yoga is something very important and profound to be able
Yes.
to see and also acknowledge the uniqueness of both, so that
Yes.
then you know what is the larger picture and which one fits where. I think that is very helpful in that way. But
Yes.
when you defined the generic yoga as something that is what is defined or described in the Yoga Shastra, in the classical yoga, one
Yes.
question that comes is even there, it's not that all the texts point towards the same idea. There is a variety, a variation, each one taking a different position on some things. So
Yes.
how do we reconcile, like if that is how we define generic yoga, and there are different approaches within the classical fold itself?
In fact, if you really look at, you're so true in saying that each proposition of yoga from different time and different schools came, even in classical yoga, whether it is Hatha Yoga or Patanjali Yoga Sutras or Swara Yoga, and then the Kundalini and other classical forms, they were evolutionary in nature. So when somebody proposed Swara Yoga, they never negated Hatha Yoga. They didn't say you can only do Swara Yoga, or they didn't say you can come directly to Swara Yoga. Or when somebody presented in the ladder of Ashtanga Yoga, nobody in any form, which is why Patanjali Yoga Sutra becomes more like a fulcrum. Any form of yoga did not challenge the hierarchy and evolutionary progress of a sadhaka from yamana yama to dhyana. Nobody proposed a swapping of steps. Everybody subscribed to that evolutionary steps. So while the stage where you come in and for purposes what you look yoga for, you can emphasize and elaborate on any one of these ideas. But never there was an attempt either to give a lateral entry or to skip some steps, or some steps were negated or forced upon as a preferred step over any other step. So when classical yoga presents different shades and different roadmaps, it was largely more purpose driven rather than giving and looking at inferior and superior or pros and cons of any step, or more importantly, its sequence. Nobody said, no, pranayama is not, asana is not required, you can straight away get into pranayama. These kind of conflicting messages didn't come. So today, we have, for naive people, there is a Kundalini workshop for 6 days or 2 days or 3 days directly.
True.
Now you're challenging the very essence of Ashtanga Yoga. So then suddenly somebody who is really learning Yama Niyama in an ashram setting start to wonder, why am I going through this tedious organic process when I have a lateral entry in a very mature, seemingly presented, negating the other steps. So those were never the situation earlier. So we have to get back to that now, that whatever nuances we bring in, as I said, emphasis can come, like body, breath, mind, emphasis can be there, no problem. Buddhists give more emphasis to mind work. In yoga, we give more emphasis to body and breath work equally. And of course, while the goal has been mind work, this is more preparatory. All that is there. All that is okay. But you can't present it to a large population who are naive into these nuances, that one is better than the other, or one can be given away, or the sequence is not really strictly to be adhered. Those kind of conflicting messages to a new practitioner or a seeker, or to a very skeptical scientific population or medical community, is where the stop has happened. So they really don't know what to embrace. They want to embrace yoga, but in what quantity, in what form, we have not answered that question.
True. But then, what you say is this requires a progressive development, which the current system is not looking into.
Yes.
And as one of the solutions that you are proposing is to bring it in an institutionalized manner, and have some kind of objective evaluation or process through which it's properly directed.
Yes.
But that itself could be a problem, because the unfoldment of yoga sadhana is subjective in nature. the
Yes.
degree of progression, the direction of progression, the intensity is all highly subjective.
Yeah.
But in the professional world today, we need to have institutions which have some kind of objective assessment,
Yeah.
which stipulated number of years, stipulate particular way. And also it brings to our next question, which I'll take up, the whole idea of uniformity, bringing in uniformity. So
Yeah.
how do we reconcile these two?
We are not mixing. I think this question is 30-year-old question to me.
Okay.
In fact, when Prashanti or Yasvyasa was becoming institution from an ashram setting, we were confronted with this question when we were becoming a research institute and then a university. So this is a world question, and this is there in the minds of every institution and sadhaka. But the problem that we are not there is we are not really looking at the overall picture in its true form. If I want to choose yoga for my spiritual sadhana, it has to be qualitative, it has to be subjective, it has to be left to my wisdom and my guru's wisdom or my style wisdom. Nobody can take it away from that. In fact, the whole Vedanta and Indian wisdom is all about personal freedom in spirituality itself, which is why we have so many paths. Nobody can dictate a particular path for spirituality. No. It is as many paths as many humans are there. We subscribe to that idea. But if I want to forcefully present a byproduct, as it were, of yoga, instead of a self-emancipation, for education, for psychological behavioral benefits, for health benefits, for wellness benefits, for disease management, then I need to box it.
True.
Then I have to take away that freedom. Then I have to box it. Right? If somebody wants to just use yoga for spiritual exploration, nobody can go there. We have to live that traditional spiritual freedom that every individual enjoys and every ashram, every guru enjoys. If those schools, if those gurus, if those sadhakas should say, I can cure this disease or I can do this in education, then we say, very good. Please bring a uniformed boxed version for this, which is universally adaptable.
True. I think the clarity that the spiritual domain is different and the application domain is different.
Absolutely.
And each one has a unique approach. One, you have an open architecture where it's between the student or the sadhaka, the guru, and the style that is being followed.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, when it is more towards the public health or the domains where collective is involved.
See, if you really look at a generic goal of yoga, it is manifesting divinity and human efficiency and performance to the best. This is the goal. So if I want to manifest my soul's expression in the parlance of spirituality, there is a path which is well laid out, which gives all the freedom, and there are as many ways and as many steps available. Now, this is no different. I'm just taking an inferior goal compared to spiritual goal of enhancing human performance in as many domains of human functioning as possible. So I need a contained structure based on the goal that I choose. If I'm choosing a healthcare and health and wellness, that's a box that I'm choosing. If I'm taking education, that's a box. So it is still enhancing human performance. Now suppose, for example, I take a boxed version of yoga and treat my cancer, treat my hypertension, treat my diabetes. Will I get rid of my diabetes and stop there? No. Then I'm the subscriber of spiritual yoga next.
True.
So basically, the yoga application is an entry to classical spiritual path. So choice, we don't have to get disease. We don't have to use it in education and psychology. We can straight away pursue spiritual goals from our sane mind, that independent mind that matures at the age of 8, the age where Gurukul admitted every individual. Either I can choose that path, or I can use it through these professions, through these occupations, and then enter spirituality. nobody is going to get stuck here. So, so our classical yoga professional should not think, oh, this is going to be used in a very limited form and that's going to be the end. No, it's a very tricky entry. Everybody finally get into spirituality very soon.
I mean, just to add to what you shared, we see a lot of friends, especially in the West, who have come into the field of yoga. And most of them, when they started, they did not start with the intention to be a yoga teacher.
Exactly.
They had some physical issue, psychological issue, something that they wanted a solution for, and gradually had some immersive experience through yoga. And
Precisely.
that really brought about the transformation. They just couldn't limit it to themselves and they wanted to share.
Exactly. Now, there are a lot of teachers. Now there is a question of even yoga and religion. Now, there were some, in fact, this is another area that I really want to work on. And I've been thinking about this, but I've not taken any professional step in this direction, where there's a conflict of other religions embracing yoga. Now, people who are free thinking,
perceived conflicts.
No. If you look at large public perception, there is. But we have, when you and I or any of the yoga professionals in this audience meet our stakeholders, they're already subscribed to our ideas. So we don't meet those who are still sitting on the fence, waiting whether the imam or Buddhist monk or a priest to tell them what to do. They are still very worried. So we haven't reached out to them. That's a larger population than who have already being reached out by us. So now there also, if religion is path finally for spirituality, yoga simply makes it faster and better. Right? Now, that is what we have to present to the world, that it doesn't challenge anybody for anything. Yoga really doesn't challenge anybody's belief systems. In fact, it only makes it better. So if somebody wants to be stuck in religious practices and beliefs, then there is an element of threat. If somebody is truly looking for spiritual goal in their present lifetime, yoga makes it easy no matter which religion you follow. Similarly, no matter which disease you want to use yoga for, it should be made available in a way that I pass that goal quickly and then come to my self-exploratory spiritual goals. But we are not making that happen. Like, for example, you said some of them had physical or health concerns. Now, imagine there are more than 75% of humanity has got health concerns. Have we reached out to them? In much graver, more serious conditions and stages where yoga can really do big step forward in their healing. We have not reached out to them. And we can only reach out to them through medical institutional approach. And we have not made yoga medically compatible. Now, education, we have been talking. Self-selected, self-motivated, people are embracing, parents are exposing their children to yoga. But have we given it to everybody, whether they are motivated or not motivated? No. Why we have not been able to give it? Because we have not boxed it the way it has to be compatible for educationists. So that's my point. We cannot be happy with that 10% of population who is already with us. There are 90% waiting to be reached out.
True. Just I'll indulge in two more questions and then I'll open up for all our participants.
Sure.
This idea that where it has to be boxed and where it has to be kept open is very clear, and that was really very helpful.
Okay.
But when we have to have some kind of empirical approach and have to have universally acceptable ways of assessing and presenting, one issue that often comes across, especially those who are working in the subjective domains, is that personally to share, when we wanted to publish a paper on Indian psychology and send it to a reputed journal, we got this feedback that the paper is very good, but please send it to the Journal of Religious Studies. So this kind of bracketing that is happening in the current dominant domains. So how do we deal with it? Is it ready? Is the modern system or the scientific system ready to accept this one? What is your take on that? How have you dealt with this question?
We have dealt with this question. If you look at our yoga publications over the last 25 years, in the first 5 years, we would say set of yoga postures and yoga sequence, yoga protocol, either for wellness benefit or for medical or disease management. Now we had to simply list the yoga techniques and report what was done, on whom we tried it, what we measured, and what we found. That was very sterile. Next 10 years, we could explain through a paragraph what went into constructing that protocol. Why we chose a technique which is sitting there. Why a particular asana is not there. Why a particular asana is there. Why a particular type of breathing is there in particular rate and particular way and method, and why not in the other method. So these kind of yoga philosophical basis for therapy protocol construction was admitted, because the medical community got exposed and matured to embrace this and look for those information. The last 10 years, we give a thorough philosophy now.
Okay.
And then the methodology, and then the actual protocol, and medical journals and communities okay with it. So now if I was to give the kind of description that we give now, 30 years ago, the medical community would have got a jolt.
True.
I think the same approach has to be taken when we present philosophy, present psychology, present education. I think in the beginning, even if it hurts, we will have to accept a bit of sterilized approach in the beginning. Now, remember, that's why I gave the example of how V.K. Iyengarji might have felt. He left and lived the attention of people only on asana. I mean, people were clapping with his perfection of how he performed those many asanas. And he lived with it. And he did not subscribe to the idea that yoga was all those asanas that he was performing. He waited patiently, allowed the world to embrace him. And when world and even his own disciples became mature, he presented them light on pranayama. So he was not upset and he was not depressed in the first 15 years that, oh my God, these people only want my asanas. He waited them to mature, to be able to see the value in pranayama. I think we should do that in academics also. So we will have to, one word answer for that is sterilized approach in the beginning.
Okay. Thank you, because this is a common question in yoga as well as in Ayurveda, because protocols, in order to match the protocols, then they might be un-Ayurvedic if you have to do it. So
not a problem. In the beginning, see, we always have, one thing is true, whether it is yoga or Ayurveda or any other system, every system has a physical manifestation. So we have to be happy in the beginning for physical manifestation. Then
the most palpable and concrete.
More palpable physical manifestation. Be happy with that in the beginning. Then bring in subtler aspects, the sukshma aspect. Finally bring the karana aspect. So take this approach of sthula, sukshma, karana. If you dump all three together to a skeptic, sterile, academic and medical world, they're going to throw us out because it's too much for them to handle.
I think that's a very helpful approach to all the researchers who might be here to take the Shariratraya approach from the sthula, from the gross to the subtle to the causal. Thank you very much, Naveenji, for this wonderful and enlightening presentation. I'll just
Pleasure is mine.
Gloss over and share the questions of our participants.
Yes.
I'll club some of the questions that have been presented.
Sure.
So we have a question from Radha Rao and one more from an anonymous name. Do we have the authority in India today which is trying to bring this generic approach towards yoga? And also, is there any attempt made to bring it in schools, as you were trying to say, which is necessary to reach out to the unreached?
Unfortunately, no. We hear, this gurus and this ashram, this institute reached out to X number of schools. So in whichever ashram is, or whichever guru and their followers are available in large numbers, they somehow make some inroads into schools or into hospitals or into wellness institutions, or including prison and so on and so forth, both in India and abroad. and in a way it looks very, very unyogic to the non-yoga community, that everybody is looking at their market share. I have yoga in so many schools, and somebody says I have more, and somebody says I have tested my yoga for 2 DCs, and somebody else says I have tested for 4 DCs. So it's actually presented an unyogic approach to yoga, unfortunately. So there are now bodies, like in healthcare we have Enigma, which I head, and Indian Yoga Association is born in recent times, and International Association of Yoga Therapy. So these associations are trying to bring in some of this baby steps first, because there's a lot of, as always for anything else, there is a resistance for change. And of course, government is no way getting into all of this as yet. Government is still in a very promotional mode and left it to professionals. So if you ask me, is there any structured institutional way? Answer is no. But as far as healthcare is concerned, both of my organizations, that is Faiths and Yogakshema, chain of clinics, where we actually demonstrated, and through these 50 colleges of yoga and naturopathy medical colleges, we have been able to bring generic yoga therapy. But have we been able to bring this through ashrams and gurus? No, we've done it independently, because that's a difficult area to get into as of now. And the other domains, not to my knowledge, any association or any professional body that has taken this approach. The only attempt was that conference in Tumkur University for yoga in education. In fact, that is how I was very keen, and it took a lot of pain from my part to convince everybody to take away health from that conference, because the temptation is to bring health everywhere. I said, no, please don't bring health. This is a non-medical university. Let's only talk about yoga in education, not yoga education, yoga in education. So similarly, we have to promote more and more universities to do that kind of conferences and seminars and symposiums, where you only talk about psychological perspectives of yoga, philosophical perspectives of yoga, religious perspectives of yoga, and don't bring health everywhere. That is a big distractor. Then I think we'll be able to amass critical group of people who are critical, academically trained to initiate this process.
Just to add to what you said, Naveen-ji, in the month of February, Indica Yoga had conducted a conference on philosophy and praxis of yoga, just to focus on the philosophy part and its practical expression of that philosophy.
Yeah. So which is why I really have a special fondness to your institution and to you, because you are one of those who are decluttering this clutter.
Thank you very much. It's all because of teachers like you that I had during my research.
Pleasure.
So we also have this question. You brought this point earlier that yoga teachers should access decoded yoga. Sanjeev Balanji asked,
yes,
how can yoga teachers access this? What will make them capable of accessing this?
If you ask me, is there one single textbook to do this? Answer is no.
No, rather, what kind of training would a yoga teacher require to get into the, what you said as the generic or the decoded yoga? Like, how can they access?
I think at an individual level, I can answer this question for each yoga practitioner and a seeker, that no matter what is your entry to yoga, it could be any style, any guru, any institution, embrace it in its current form, first step. And once you drenched yourself at certain level, either as a disciple or a certificate or a diploma, whatever level, then start looking for generic aspects in it. Like, let me give you an example. If I am a Sudarshana Kriya Yoga practitioner and a teacher, then start looking at what are the classical pranayama techniques which forms Sudarshana Kriya Yoga. Then start talking about it, right? Start using it, not necessarily only as part of Sudarshana Kriya Yoga. This is the first step, right? So then start writing about it, start discussing about it, start attending conferences like yours and ours where decoded yoga is talked about. Then a lot of people don't know what are the classical content of most of these practices, right? First introduce that. It is not something new. It is classical ingredients put together differently. That's all. this awareness need to be first come to the practitioner and then should take steps to spread it. This would be a very good step, first step.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we have a question from one of our regular participants, Debraji. She asks, like, one of the things that we find with allopathic medicine or allopathic approach is the highly reductionist and compartmentalized approaches.
Yes.
If the way you are proposing and suggesting that we need to look into yoga in a boxed manner, will that also lead into that kind of situation?
Certainly.
How do we take care of it?
There is no doubt that will any of this boxed approach for yoga in medicine or in education, in psychology, in any domain, occupational health, sports, anywhere, will it chop off a lot of things from the spiritual, purist path of yoga? Answer is yes. But we have agreed to make this compromise, which is why I use the word box. If I have to go into a box, I have to make myself compatible into the box size, right? So that's the compromise. Now, is that my end? No. So now anybody who gets healed or who gets yoga in the primary school is free to explore this spiritual path, as I said. So for a moment, yes, sterilization would happen, compromise would be there, but there should not be derangement. There should not be misrepresentation. There should not be an attempt to create certain styles which can even harm. They should not be limiting the scope of yoga itself. Those are the safety steps we should take. Misrepresentation, limiting its scope, and derangement should be avoided. But otherwise, adaptation, compromise, yes, that is inevitable. It's a window. I'm not looking the yoga from an open field. I'm looking at yoga from the health point window, education window. There is a limited view. But once this purpose is served, I will cross the window and go to the open and then be a sadhaka.
So there are some connected questions. I'll just club them together,
Okay.
which starts from this question itself. One by Rajiv Ji and Dharmeshwar Upadhyaya Ji, who all express the concern that if it is made in this way,
Yeah.
then being sterile yoga, can it be, will it lead to distortion and digestion of yoga and some other forms coming up while completely masking the intrinsic or the inherent yogic base of this whole practice?
Answer is no. I'll tell you why. Now, whether you take a physical form, like many people said, is this an allopathic approach? No. Please, let's not bring a preconceived notion of what is good and bad. So that's not about it. This whole idea is not about that. So let's say there is a sthula element, there is a sukshma element, there's a karana element in every concept and in every practice in yoga. Now, whether I am not asked to limit only to the sthula in the beginning. I mean, in my practice, I can use sukshma practices. I can do karana practices. But when I measure, I only measure sthula benefit. My outcome is only sthula for now. Because the science can only measure sthula outcomes. Science does not accept and know to measure sukshma and karana benefits. Now, my input can be all three. My output is only sthula benefit. If I'm reporting a benefit, with the cause and effect, the effect is only I'm reporting the physical benefits. Right? Like, for example, now if I'm using yoga for education, I am only reporting scholastic benefits. I'm only reporting psychological well-being. But am I not reporting the difference in perception itself, which will happen to every student when they practice yoga? But I don't know to measure it right now. Maybe 10 years from now, we will evolve a method to do it. Wanting to do everything right from in the first step is creating a problem. So let's look at cause and effect. In the cause, we can have all the subtleties. We don't have to compromise in its construct, method, and teaching. and in practice. It can have all the subtleties. For example, the pranic energization technique of Svyasa is used very effectively in cancer therapy. We measure the benefit of it. But can you explain all the prana elements that we talk? No, not yet. But can I use it? Yes. Can I measure the benefit out of it? Yes.
Thank you, because that is one concern which so many people have flagged off, because there is also this intrinsic or inherent fear that this might be digested like many other disciplines or the knowledge traditions of India.
If you ask me, no, I have asked this question to myself, and my answer is, have we taken charge and control of the whole system? Then everybody is waiting for us to create a roadmap. Nobody has come, and allopaths have not come and taken yoga and boxed it yet. Allopaths have not taken Ayurveda and boxed it. Nobody has taken Jyotisha and boxed it. Nobody has done anything to Indian science, actually. They are all waiting. And since we have not given it in a way that we want it to be given, it is left in its limited scope. And we, with the limited scope, are of the opinion, in so many domains, yoga can be useful and handy. Why is it not being embraced? So it's like two people in two ends. We have to come to the middle path. So we have to come to a middle path and say, okay, I want to use yoga for a particular purpose. I will make it customized in a manner that I don't lose the ingredients of it, but you only look up for what you can look at. Like for example, you can quote Shastra in this, that when somebody practices yoga, based on my perception, I recognize your physical benefit, your sukshma benefit, your karana benefit. If I am not equipped to see your sukshma benefit, I will never see it. But that doesn't mean you didn't practice and you don't have it. The same way, if medical science can't see every subtler aspects of yoga, that's okay. If it cannot use prana, pancha prana and its effects, it's okay. If it can't see the effect of nadis, it's okay. If it can't see the chakras, it's okay. If I do chakra meditation and if the physical benefit is measured, that is fine, isn't it? But for us to go and tell, no, you must believe chakra has got neurological basis to it, then we're creating conflict.
I think this is a very important point. One, to hold on to the core of the yoga philosophy, yoga practice.
Yes.
Have a direct access, which also would involve study of Sanskrit, accessing the text directly from the sources, and having a knowledge, having a proper base in it, and also be open to the new emergent fields and the interaction between the modern fields and the discipline of yoga. I think that is where one needs to invest upon as a good yoga practitioner.
Exactly. Yes.
So thank you, Naveen-ji, for this wonderful, really wonderful presentation, and pushing us to think on certain lines which we were not really comfortable, to be frank.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can imagine. And my, instead of others suggesting or pointing out problems and then suggesting solutions, it's better for us to look at it in a critical, objective way and embrace the problems just the way our yogis, our ancestors did, and come up with a proposal from our side. If we don't do it, I can tell you, then medicine and every other academic professionals will come up with their own model. And then for us to get up and say, this is a wrong method of doing it, would be very unfair.
True.
Yeah.
So I think every good session has to come to an end, and we'll have to conclude shortly. I would request two things from you. One, if people have to reach out to you or follow your work, how can they do it? And also a parting message. And also in terms of reaching out, someone had also asked, Anita ji had asked, what does Enigma do? So I'll come back to that, but before that, I'll make quick announcements of next day's program and then revert to you.
Sure.
Srinivas ji, can I please request you to flash tomorrow's programs? So tomorrow morning, we have a practice session led by Naveen Meghwal, who is the director of Ananda Yoga Hong Kong. He will be leading a session on Prana Yoga, which includes specific set of asana practice, pranayama practice, and a meditation practice combined together. Then we have in the noon session, Sri Ganesh Mohanji, who is the program director of Swastha Yoga and Ayurveda. Many of you might know about the Mohans, the Mohan family, Mohanji and Nitya Mohanji, Indra Mohanji and Ganesh Mohanji, who were the direct disciples of Desikachar and Krishnamacharya, who had a long-term association with Desikachar. They have this whole school called Swastha Yoga, and Ganesh Mohanji is known for his worldwide practice when it comes to yoga and yoga therapy. So he will be looking into yoga for well-being and therapy, ancient wisdom for modern life. That is the noon session between 11:30 to 12:30 p.m. And in the evening, we once again have a feed. We started discussion and presentations on Nada Yoga. We had something on Rasa Yoga, then Nada Yoga Upasana, and tomorrow we have a session on Nada Yoga and Drupad Sadhana with Umakant Gundecha ji and Tarakini ji. Umakant Gundecha is a Drupad maestro, one of the known names in Hindustani music, especially in the Drupad style, who is also the co-founder of Drupad Sansthan, one of the best institutions for practicing and learning Drupad music. The maestro himself will be there tomorrow with us interacting, and along with him would be Tarakini ji, who is a consultant and a trainer in the field of education and music, who is also the co-founder of an NGO dedicated for music and performances called Sunad. So both will be there in the evening, and I promise you that will be one of the most rewarding sessions of the series that we have had. So kindly join us for all these sessions and stay with us for the entire month. Just as some of you were asking, all these sessions would be there available on Indica Yoga YouTube channel, and they also will be available on Indica Yoga website, that is www.indicayoga.com. The next week's events are already presented on the website, so kindly have a look into it and mark your calendars and do join us for all these events. So with this, I now come back to Naveen ji for two things. One, how can people follow your work and stay connected? And then a parting message.
3 ways that people can reach out to me. One is through Enigma. There is an Enigma page in Facebook, and any comments or any conversation can be initiated through Enigma for those who are looking at yoga and naturopathy as a system of medicine, and where we have academic pursuit of yoga as a postgraduate medical degree in MD in yoga therapy and PhD in yoga and health sciences. Then the other way is what I do, Yogakshema Clinic. We call it for clinic for stress, pain, lifestyle, nutrition. The reason why we call it as these generic 4 problems, where all forms of traditional medicine, not just yoga and naturopathy together, Ayurveda and other systems are used. So there is a website of Yogakshema Clinic, stress and lifestyle clinic. That is where most patients and people for health and wellness benefits can reach out to us. And
you want to mention the website name?
Yogakshema.com. Yogakshema as in no H. So KSEMA with the transliterary code with a dot below S. Or if you just Google via our institution and my personal email or my academic email, which is very simple to remember, Anveshana, ANVESANA, which is research in Sanskrit, without H again, at gmail.com. So in most Google searches of my links, we get Anveshana at gmail.com. So for any academic discussion, I request people to come through that. And there are online.
If someone wants to pursue some research, they could always connect.
Certainly. And for patients, we have a healthcare market called Practo, where you can directly go and take an appointment with me or any of my doctors in as many clinics that we have. So clinical path, Yogakshema website, Yogakshema Facebook, Enigma Facebook, and my own email ID.
So thank you very much. I think they would have enough access channels to you, and you will definitely be flooded with the queries.
Thank you.
And I really would like to say that Naveen ji is one of the best mentors in the field of yoga research. And most of us in S. Vyasa have always benefited from the kind of clarity and light and the affection that he has showered on us profusely.
So kind of you, and I think we are all in it together, and which is why we see so much compatibility and synchrony. And I think more and more people join the community of that synchrony, so that we can bring some long-term adaptations and changes, so that we let people across the world embrace yoga in its true form, and to begin with in the way that it is compatible to them, and eventually in its true form. So my parting message would be, it is very important and courageous step that we all should not shy away from in looking at the concerns that is available, that is confronted in our field. As a seeker, as a teacher, as a faculty, it is always important for us to think from the opposite side before they think. If people are not embracing us, what are the problems? And have we presented the best platform? Have we presented the best protocol? Have we presented the best method? What are the shortcomings? So it's very important for us to not just focus on what we can do, or it is important for us to focus what we have not been able to do and why we have not been able to do. So answer why, and then we suddenly get the list of problems that we need to solve. And when I have done that, I have got this kind of thoughts which I've shared with you, and then automatically every thinking brain, every yogic brain comes up with a very compatible solution once you have the problem. And one such solution is generic yoga therapy, generic yoga. So each of us can look up for first prevailing problem from the opposite side, and then find solution which is true to our own wisdom, and take help of our gurus and acharyas and institutions. There are plenty of them. There are a large number of platforms and methods available to create clusters, study groups for any chosen problem. Take a professional approach. In fact, very important, one of scientist mentor told me that just current day yogis should embrace ancient yogis approach. Look at how methodical, scientific, ruthless, critical, confronting, skeptical our yogis were. They never took anything as a faith or a presentation. It has to be like this. No, they confronted each other. They did tarka, vagvada. They were not afraid of churning, and we should churn. Why are we afraid to churn with fellow yogis and other professionals, other intellectuals? Churning is part of our heritage and tradition. Churn. Don't shy away from churning. Churn openly. Confront every problem openly. And then solution emerges.
Very true. I think this is one of the greatest messages of the session, to to confront the issues straight away and with the confidence, and adopt the ancient yogis' perspective and ruthless pursuit of truth.
We don't have to do anything new. They've done it, shown it. There is a body of literature as a result of that churning. It didn't come just by swadhyaya. It was very much part of churning, and we just have to do what they did.
True. Thank you very much, Naveenji, for this really beautiful session. And I also would like to thank all our participants. We had more than 160 participants on various platforms joining us this evening from across the globe. And for all the questions, I apologize. I might have missed some questions, but you can always reach out to Naveenji and he'll be there. And I request all our participants, see, we have such insightful teachers, researchers coming into the session. So if you could share this message and spread the light and inspire and encourage more people to join, I think this is the kind of message that we would want to reach out to as many people as possible. So with this request and a heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for joining us this evening, I really would like to bring the session to an end.
Thank
Namaste.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
My pranams to every yoga seeker and yoga bandhu in this session.
Thank you, Naveen ji. Thank you.